Picture this. You meet a woman in her early 30s and the whole thing feels different, not better in the easy Hollywood way, not lighter, not looser. It's not a summer fling energy. It's more like stepping onto a well-built bridge that still requires you to walk straight. You can't stumble around, half present, hoping chemistry will do the work for you. A lot of men describe it the same way. Even if they don't use the same words, it feels like balance, like precision, like the relationship has gravity sooner, like one careless move could tilt the entire dynamic. If you felt that, you're not crazy, and you're not automatically afraid of commitment. You're not necessarily emotionally stunted either. What you're feeling is friction. Friction happens when timing, expectations, emotional history, practical life decisions, and biology all stack on top of each other in the same connection. In your early 20s, dating can be chaotic, but it's chaotic with cushion. You've got time to experiment. You can make mistakes without paying much interest. You can improvise and still call it finding yourself. In your 30s, the cushion gets thinner. Not because life becomes less fun, but because life becomes more real. Careers aren't hypothetical. Housing isn't theoretical. Family expectations don't stay in the background. Health and energy aren't infinite. And the consequences of "we'll see" start showing up as lost years, not just awkward stories. So when you date a woman in her early 30s, you're not dating a vibe. You're dating a full system. She didn't arrive here by accident. Here's something men don't always understand until they're face to face with it. A woman who has built a stable life by her early 30s without settling into something that doesn't fit has probably said no a lot. She said no to relationships that were convenient but wrong. No to men who were exciting but unreliable. No to situationships that offered attention but no future. No to being almost chosen. No to trading her peace for someone else's potential. She's likely built skills because she had to, not because it was trendy. She learned how to carry herself through uncertainty, how to pay her bills without depending on anybody, how to keep moving when nobody is clapping for her progress, how to travel, grow, and build routines without a partner as a crutch, how to sit alone without falling apart. That strength is attractive. It also changes the environment because a woman like that isn't searching for someone to save her. She's not looking for a man to complete her. She isn't dating to fill silence. She already knows she can survive the silence. She is dating to add something that actually improves her life. That's why it can feel heavy to you, not because she's too much, but because she's not desperate for anything you're offering. Which means you can't rely on the old tricks. You can't rely on charm as a substitute for character. You can't rely on excitement as a substitute for stability. She can enjoy you without needing you. And that's a new kind of pressure for a lot of men. The stakes are different, so the questions are different. When a woman in her early 30s dates, she's often not asking the same questions women asked in their early 20s. In your 20s, chemistry can carry you. The relationship can coast on momentum. You can build a whole relationship on attraction, inside jokes, late night talks, and weekends that feel like mini vacations. You can ignore incompatibilities and call it passion. You can postpone hard conversations and call it not rushing. In her early 30s, attraction is still important, but it's not enough. Potential stops being the currency, proof becomes the currency, not proof in the form of dramatic gestures or speeches or a perfect first date. Proof in the form of consistency, the ability to show up on ordinary days, the ability to keep your word when you're tired, busy, stressed, or annoyed. Proof that your personality doesn't collapse the moment you're not getting what you want. If she's built a stable life, she's not looking for someone to impress her. She's looking for someone who can integrate into something that already works. That's why she brings up topics early that might feel intense if you're used to more casual dating. Where is your life actually going? What kind of man are you under stress? How do you handle disagreement when you can't win? What does commitment look like in your actions, not your talk? Do you want children? When? Are you ready for what that requires? What does partnership look like on a random Tuesday night, not on a weekend trip? Those aren't pressure tactics, they're filters. Think of it like this. She's not interrogating you. She's interviewing reality because she's learned that wasting time is a quiet form of heartbreak. A lot of men interpret this as her being picky, guarded, or demanding. But what looks like picky is often just precision. What looks like guarded is often just pattern recognition. What looks like demanding is often just a woman refusing to gamble her next chapter on someone who's undecided about his own life. And if you're honest, that's not crazy. Maturity doesn't erase history, it organizes it. Men love a clean fantasy. A woman in her 30s will be calm, emotionally intelligent, less drama, easier to love. Sometimes that's true, but here's what's also true. Maturity doesn't delete her history, it files it. By her early 30s, there's a strong chance she's lived through some combination of a relationship that broke her trust, a situation where she was led on, a season of burnout, a period of career instability, family, responsibility that forced her to grow up fast, a close friend's divorce that changed how she sees marriage, a pregnancy scare, a fertility conversation, or a reality check about timelines, therapy that taught her what her patterns are, a reinvention that cost her people she loved. Those experiences don't automatically make her bitter. Often they make her clearer. She's less likely to talk herself out of red flags just because she feels chemistry. She's less likely to romanticize inconsistency. She's less likely to tolerate disappearing acts. She's less likely to chase mixed signals. So if you're hoping to win her over by being charming, spontaneous, and vaguely ambitious, you might feel like you're failing a test you didn't know you were taking. Because you are being evaluated, not for your looks, not for your social status, not for your ability to entertain her. You're being evaluated for capacity. Can you hold responsibility without becoming resentful? Can you communicate without shutting down or ghosting? Can you be present without needing constant applause? Can you regulate yourself when life becomes inconvenient? Can you handle her independence without trying to control it? Can you lead yourself, or do you need a relationship to give you direction? This is where men start to feel not enough, not because they're bad men, but because many men were taught that confidence and charm equal readiness. Confidence can be a mask. Readiness shows up in habits. Commitment isn't a vibe, it's a discipline, and discipline is visible. The biological clock isn't an insult, it's a reality. This part needs to be said carefully, without panic, without shaming women, and without turning it into some manipulative argument. Fertility is not a moral issue. It's not a weapon. It's not something to pressure anyone with. It's biology. Biology influences choices, whether people talk about it openly or not. So when you date a woman in her early 30s, there may be a timeline quietly present, even if she never brings it up directly, even if she seems relaxed, even if her profile is casual, even if she's focused on career. If children are part of her vision, she's often running two tracks at the same time: the emotional track, building trust, intimacy, safety, and love; the logistical track, making sure she's not investing years into something that can't realistically become what she wants. That internal math can look like urgency, not desperation, urgency. And there's a difference. Desperation says, pick me or I fall apart. Urgency says, time matters, so honesty matters. Men sometimes respond to urgency by staying vague, making jokes, or asking for endless more time without offering clarity. To you, it might feel like being careful. To her, it can feel like borrowed time. That's why timelines matter early, not on the third date as a dramatic ultimatum, but early as a straightforward truth, because the worst outcome isn't a breakup. The worst outcome is two good people quietly losing years because neither of them wanted to name what they needed. Fertility conversations are also money conversations. Many men don't realize how practical this gets until they see it up close. Fertility support can involve testing, treatments, emotional strain, physical toll, and financial cost. It can be unpredictable, it can stretch time, it can stress a relationship even when two people love each other. So if you're operating with the assumption that kids are a later conversation, understand that later can become complicated faster than you think. This isn't a call for panic, it's a call for respect. If you want kids, say that. If you don't, say that. If you're unsure, say that too. But understand that uncertainty still has consequences. It's not neutral. It still costs time. Clarity isn't pressure. Ambiguity is pressure. She doesn't want to be rescued. She wants to be matched. By her early 30s, many women have built independence not as a statement, but as a requirement. They built careers, they built routines, they built standards, they built support systems, they built a relationship with themselves that doesn't collapse when a man doesn't text back. This changes the power dynamic. In your 20s, a man can sometimes win by being exciting. Adventure, spontaneity, intensity, those can feel like leadership when everyone is still exploring. In her 30s, excitement without steadiness feels like a liability, because when someone has built a stable life, they don't need more stimulation, they need more safety. So if you pitch impulsive plans, dramatic lifestyle pivots, and big future fantasies without structure, she may not feel inspired. She may feel tired, because she's not asking, is he fun? She's asking, is he consistent when life gets heavy? Does his mood control the relationship? Can he build, or does he only dream? Does he take responsibility, or does he always have an excuse? Will I be forced to carry the emotional weight for both of us? And here's the part some men need to hear without getting defensive. If she's stable, your instability becomes obvious, not because she's judging you like a villain, because she knows what it costs to rebuild after someone disrupts a system. She's lived through "I'll figure it out later" turning into chaos. She's watched men promise futures they couldn't fund, emotionally or financially. She's seen the difference between potential and follow through. So, she's not impressed by ambition alone. She's watching execution. Past relationships aren't the issue. Unresolved patterns are. Men throw the word baggage around like it's always a negative. But the truth is, everybody has history. The real question isn't whether she has a past. The question is whether her past is resolved enough to create peace in the present. There's a difference between wounds and boundaries. Unhealed wounds create chaos. Earned boundaries create stability. A woman in her early 30s might move slower emotionally, not because she's cold, but because she's learned that speed can be a trap. She might have clearer limits, not because she's rigid, but because she knows what happens when you tolerate disrespect early. She might respond strongly to certain behaviors because she's already lived the full cost of those behaviors. Your job isn't to diagnose her, your job is to pay attention. When she talks about her past, does she sound bitter or reflective? Does she take accountability or only blame? Does she sound like a victim of everyone, or does she show growth? Does she communicate her needs clearly, or does she punish you for not reading her mind? The past isn't automatically the problem. The pattern is. And if you want a grown relationship, you need to be able to have grown conversations about what shaped both of you without turning it into a courtroom. If she has children, this is not a side story. It's the story. If you date a mother, you are not just dating a woman. You are stepping into an ecosystem. Children aren't accessories. They aren't a bonus. They aren't something you tolerate to get the relationship. They are a schedule. They are emotional reality. They are responsibility. They are often co-parenting dynamics, even when the other parent is inconsistent or absent. Kids don't care about charisma. They watch patterns. They feel tone. They notice stability. They sense respect. So the real question isn't, can I handle kids? The real question is, can I be stable in a life where I am not the center? Because that's what it looks like. Plans get canceled, energy gets redirected, money gets allocated differently. There's stress that has nothing to do with you. There are nights where she's not available emotionally because she's spent. If you're not ready for that reality, you can become resentful. And nothing kills love faster than a man who wants a woman but resents her life. This isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to prevent you from stepping into something you're not built for and then blaming her for it. Love doesn't erase consequences. It requires responsibility. A serious relationship isn't just feelings. It's logistics. It's time. It's money. It's decisions. It's habits. It's health. It's family. It's legal and financial consequences if marriage becomes part of the plan. The specifics depend on where you live, but the principle is universal. Love doesn't delete reality. A mature approach is straightforward. Talk about money early, not as an interrogation, but as respect. Discuss debt, savings, goals, spending habits. Talk about lifestyle, expectations. Talk about what building actually means in practical terms. Hard conversations don't ruin good relationships. Avoiding hard conversations ruins them. Avoiding reality doesn't protect love, it protects resentment. Modern dating trained her to be efficient. Today's dating culture created more options and less accountability. People disappear. People keep backups. People delay commitment while demanding benefits. People future fake with big words and no actions. People stay vague so they can exit without guilt. Women in their early 30s have often lived through the modern dating cycle enough times to stop playing. So they adapt. They don't need constant texting. They need consistency. They don't need performance. They need character. They don't need a man who says, "I'm serious" after a great weekend. They need a man whose behavior stays steady after a stressful week. When your approach is casual and hers is intentional, it can feel like you're speaking different languages. You may think you're being relaxed. She may experience you as unreliable, and that gap is where a lot of promising connections die. She might be emotionally ahead of you, and that can trigger you. This is uncomfortable for a lot of men to admit, but it's real. Women are often forced by culture and life to develop emotional skills earlier. They learn to name feelings, they learn boundaries, they learn communication, they learn emotional labor because they're expected to carry it. They learn to anticipate needs, manage relationships, and keep peace. So when you date a woman in her early 30s, she might have skills you haven't built yet. She can talk about conflict without exploding. She can set limits without guilt. She can see patterns instead of making excuses. She can choose peace over adrenaline. She can leave what doesn't align, even if it hurts. If you haven't developed those skills, you might feel exposed. And when men feel exposed, some of them reach for control, distance, sarcasm, dominance, indifference, playing it cool, withholding communication to regain the upper hand. None of that makes you strong, it makes you predictable. A mature woman doesn't need perfection, she needs grounding. What she wants isn't intensity, it's certainty. A lot of men confuse intensity with love. Intensity is easy, intensity is newness, intensity is adrenaline, intensity is dramatic confessions, intensity is rushing closeness before trust exists, intensity is big promises when everything feels good, and intensity fades. She has learned that intensity without stability is chaos wearing a nice outfit. What she wants is rarer, a man whose behavior doesn't shift when the novelty wears off. A man who doesn't disappear when conflict shows up, a man who doesn't punish her for having standards, a man who is consistent when there's nothing to prove, because love isn't sustained by excitement. It's sustained by reliability, humility, communication, and shared effort. That's adulthood, why it can feel like a tightrope for men. So let's name the real reason dating her can feel like walking a tightrope. You can't hide. In more casual dating, your weak spots can stay hidden for a while. You can keep it light. You can keep it fun. You can avoid defining anything. You can leave things ambiguous and still enjoy the benefits. With a woman in her early 30s, ambiguity gets exposed quickly because she's not building a moment. She's evaluating a direction, and direction requires truth. The truth about your habits, the truth about your emotional capacity, the truth about your timeline, the truth about your finances, the truth about your willingness to commit, the truth about whether you actually want partnership or you just want companionship when it's convenient. This is why men sometimes say, it feels like pressure, but a lot of what men call pressure is simply the demand for clarity. And clarity feels uncomfortable if you've been living in maybe. How to navigate this like a man. If you want to date a woman in her early 30s, well, you don't need a perfect body, a perfect job, or perfect confidence. You need integrity. You need self-leadership. You need the ability to communicate like an adult. Here's what that looks like in practice. 1. Stop trying to win her. Start trying to understand alignment. Winning is performance. Alignment is truth. When you're trying to win, you say what sounds good. When you're trying to align, you say what's real. Ask yourself, do I actually want a committed partnership in the near future? Do I want children or not? Am I emotionally available or do I just like attention? Do I have stability or am I hoping she will stabilize me? Do I have a direction or am I drifting? You don't need to have everything figured out, but you do need to be honest about what you don't have figured out. 2. Lead with clarity, not confusion. Clarity is masculine. Vagueness isn't mysterious. It's exhausting. If you want something serious, say it early without overpromising. I'm dating with intention. I want to build toward a real partnership if the connection is right. If you're not ready for serious, say that too. I like you, but I'm not in a place to build something serious right now. That honesty might cost you the relationship, but dishonesty costs her time. And if you're dealing with a woman who respects herself, time is the one thing she won't donate to confusion. 3. Be consistent in small things. Grand gestures don't build trust. Small consistency builds trust. Show up when you say you will. Follow through on plans. Communicate when life gets busy instead of disappearing. Handle conflict without punishment. Keep your tone respectful even when you're frustrated. Most relationships don't die because of one big betrayal. They die because of 1,000 small disappointments. 4. Learn the difference between comfort and boredom. Some men are addicted to adrenaline. They confuse peace with boredom. A mature woman often prefers peace. If your nervous system only recognizes chaos as love, you will sabotage stability. So, check yourself. Are you looking for a partner or a storyline? Do you want a home or a chase? Do you want a woman or the validation of being wanted? A stable relationship feels quieter at times. That's not a problem. That's the point. 5. Talk about timelines like an adult. You don't need to propose on date 3, but you do need to be able to discuss direction. If she brings up kids, commitment, or timelines, don't dodge, don't joke, don't act like she's being crazy. Respond like a man who respects reality. I'm open to kids, and I see that in my future. I'd want to build a strong foundation first, but I'm not dating just to pass time. Or, I'm not sure about kids. I'm still working through that. I don't want to waste your time if that's a non-negotiable for you. That's not pressure. That's leadership. 6, don't compete with her independence. A woman's independence is not an insult to your masculinity. It's not a challenge. It's not a rejection. It's simply the life she built. If you try to diminish it, you'll lose her respect. If you try to control it, you'll lose the relationship. If you honor it, you can become someone she chooses freely, not someone she depends on out of fear. A woman choosing you freely is the highest kind of commitment. 7, treat money as a shared language, not a taboo. If you're serious, learn to talk about finances without ego. Ego says, that's none of your business. Maturity says, if we're building a life, it's our business. This doesn't mean you need to reveal every detail immediately. It means you need to be willing to discuss values, spending habits, savings, debt, lifestyle expectations, work ethic, long-term goals. Money isn't just money, it's priorities. 8, become the kind of man who can hold weight. This is the core of it. A woman in her early 30s often isn't looking for a man who can talk about building. She's looking for a man who can carry building, a man who can handle responsibility without acting like he's doing her a favor, a man who can lead himself and collaborate with her, a man who doesn't collapse under stress, a man who doesn't use silence as punishment, a man who can apologize without being humiliated by it, a man who can be steady without needing constant control. That's what makes you rare, and that's what makes you valuable. The payoff, this can be the deepest relationship you've ever had. Here's the upside men don't talk about enough. Dating a woman in her early 30s can be profoundly rewarding if you're ready, because clarity is a gift. A lot of women at this stage are more direct. They play fewer games, they value peace. They communicate needs more clearly, they know what they want, and they don't pretend otherwise. They respect effort and consistency more than flashy performance. And when a woman like that chooses you, it's not because you entertained her. It's because you showed up, because you were steady, because you were honest, because you were aligned, because you were safe, because you had a direction, because you respected her time. Relationships built on that foundation don't collapse the moment life gets inconvenient. They don't break because the honeymoon fades. They deepen because the system is strong. Final reality check. Dating a woman in her early 30s isn't hard because she's too much. It's hard because she's a mirror. She reflects back where you've been vague, where you've been inconsistent, where you've been relying on charm instead of character, where you've been treating commitment like an idea instead of a practice, where you've been drifting and calling it freedom. That mirror can make you defensive, or it can make you better. This isn't a warning to avoid her, it's a challenge to meet her with integrity. If you can bring clarity, consistency, and a real plan for your life, she won't feel like pressure. She'll feel like a partner, and that's the difference between a relationship that feels like a tightrope and one that feels like a foundation.